Alrighty, so let's look at something today. I want to take a look at the Richter-Veresov Attack. This is an opening that I've spent a lot of time playing. This is one of my main openings with white. And I have several openings with white, but they all tend to be deep pawn sidelines like this. And I want to take a look at some of the theoretical continuations of this opening, some of the more critical continuations, and just look at what the theoretical status of this opening is in 2026. What are people doing who play this opening, and what are strong players doing against it, and how has theory evolved on this opening? Because it's not a very well understood opening by very many people. I think it tends to fly under the radar a bit. So there are a lot of interesting things that could be said here. I also want to take a look at maybe some traps that could be interesting. And I want to do just a brief overview. So these days, I think a lot of the people who would play this opening are playing this instead. This is the Jabava. And both openings have some similar ideas behind them. We want to kind of play an E4 style position, but starting from D4. And the logic is a little bit different in each case. The idea is to maybe play E3 and pressure the center, but eventually engineer E4 in the Jabava. And the logic in the Veresov is we're going to try to play E4 in one fell swoop if we can. And if we can't do that, then we might not do it at all. We might instead go for some kind of stonewall formation. So the two openings have some similar ideas at their core, but there are also some differences. And I play the Veresov because I'm old. When I learned chess, this had no name. It wasn't seen as a coherent opening idea. I think maybe if I had learned chess 10 years later, this might be one of the main openings that I play, but I've literally never touched it at all because I just came before that became trendy. So I play this instead. And there are some interesting nooks and crannies here. So why would white play in this fashion? Let's go over that first. Why would white block the c-pawn with the knight? Why would white threaten to take the knight? We know that damaging black structure like this doesn't actually convey any benefits to white. So why would you do this? What is the underlying logic here? Let me illuminate those of you, those outsiders, what the actual idea is for white here, because it is interesting. In order to explain the whole idea behind this opening, we have to go all the way back to basics. We have to go back to basic chess 101 for dummies. And so when you play an e-pawn opening, you can attack your opponent's pawn with a piece, right? And your opponent will always have fewer ways to defend this pawn because this is a bad move. This pawn really isn't, you really want to avoid playing this if you can at any cost. So there's always going to be fewer ways to defend this pawn. But when you play a d-pawn opening, now pressuring this pawn, you really need to do it with another pawn because you just can't put enough pressure on it with your pieces. Black can protect with both of these pawns and is protected with a queen right away. So in queen's pawn openings, you tend to see this battle of pressuring the pawn with a pawn first to make black uncomfortable in the center, force black to make concessions in the center. And you can also pressure with the e-pawn. So there are a few different branches of d-pawn openings. So we consider the openings where white plays c4 either right away or eventually to be main lines. And this is considered white's best idea. This is the strongest plan. So all openings that involve this in some form are considered main lines. And there are two other things that white can do, right? So white can try to break with the e-pawn instead, and if you do it right away, that's the Black Mardimer Gambit, and you can see that it's not completely 100% equal, so it is a risky gambit doing it straight away, but you can do that. Another option is you can delay this move and make other productive moves and try to engineer this. So for instance, in the Kali system, you can have this kind of position where what we're going to do is eventually engineer e4. We're going to just set up a pawn pyramid here that's very solid in the center, and black will do whatever they're going to do. And then once we have enough pieces protecting e4, we can play e4 without sacrificing material. So similar idea, we're going to break in the center, but we're going to break with the e-pawn instead of the c-pawn. And the Richter-Veresov attack is just another way of doing this. This is, again, we want to play e4. We can't do it right now, but we're going to wait and see what black does. And depending on what they do, for instance, if black plays c5 here, we could play e4 straight away. We could also take and play e4. And it just depends on what black does. So we're going to engineer this move, e4. And once we do get this move in, it's very likely that the position could resemble a French or a Caro-Kann. So really the idea behind the Veresov is that we're going to try to play e4, and once we do, we're getting an e4 position where we've avoided a large tree of theory. We've avoided the open Sicilian, we've avoided the Berlin, we've avoided some things that maybe you don't want to deal with, and we've pretty much turned it into e4, but it's only the French and Caro-Kann, and all the rest of e4 has been deleted. So some would see that as a victory, some would see that as removing all the fun parts of e4, depending on your perspective. So this opening isn't for everyone. It just depends on, do you like playing against the French and Caro-Kann? Because you better. If you don't, you're not going to like this, because that really is what it is. And that's pretty much it. It's just a way of getting e4 style positions while greatly reducing the amount of theory that you need to know. So one third branch that I should mention is you can also, instead of breaking on either of these squares, you can just, make a pyramid in the center, be solid, and say, okay, I'm going to play on the dark squares, you can have the light squares. I'm white, I'm one move ahead of you, so if you just mirror me, I'm going to have an advantage here. So you're going to have to, I'll let you figure out how you're breaking, and I'll just use my one move advantage to win, and I'll just be strong on the dark squares. So that's another idea, is to not be the one that breaks, instead to be solid, very, very solid in the center. And so you have the London, and you have the Stonewall. The Trompovsky could also be considered, a variant of this, where, again, we're just going to set up this solid structure in the center. We might take, or maybe not. There are multiple ways to play the Trompovsky. So there are three different categories of openings, d4 openings, right? Main lines, and then the e4 lines, and then the solid center lines. So that's the beginning of the logic behind the Veresov. The Veresov is, I don't want to gambit a pawn, like the Black Mardimer gambit. I don't want to be down a pawn, if I can help it. But in the Kali system, you spend an extra move playing e3, e4, and I don't want to waste a move either. I want the most efficient development possible. So I'm going to try to play e4 in one move, but I'm also going to only do this if I can do it without making concessions that are too huge positionally. Pretty much, I'm prepared to accept maybe a 2-to-1 majority for black in the center, and I might give away the bishop pair in some lines. So I might give away some small positional concessions in the process of achieving this goal. But in return, I will get a lead in development. And that lead in development should compensate roughly for the positional trumps that black accrues. And so black will have to defend against some kind of attack first before they can get that endgame. So that's the idea here. So let's take a look at some traps. So there's an interesting trap that can occur here. You can get... Some people play this. This is called the Boyce defense. It's the only defense that I know of that actually has a name. And the reason it has a name is that this can be arrived at from a Trompowsky move order. So you can have, for instance, knight f6, bishop g5, d5, knight d2, and again, we get the same thing from this move order. And because this is, this can also be arrived at through the Trompowsky attack, I assume that's why it has a name, since the Trompowsky is a slightly more popular opening. There's no other reason I can think of, because this isn't considered to be a critical line against the Veresov. So it's always struck me as strange that this is the only named defense. So, there's an interesting trap that can occur here. Some people, many people will instantly notice that there's the potential for tactics here. And what you can do is, if they play c5, we can actually set up a bit of a trick here. So, for instance, block with the knight, they take, we take, they take the bishop, and then knight d5. And we're going to win the exchange back. It can't be stopped. But the play is still very complex after this because, black can try to trap this knight in the corner. If you are precise with the white pieces, you can convert. And this is definitely a good advantage for white, close to winning. So it's a very interesting position. Very frustrating trap for people to fall into, because usually they think they're trapping you when they do this. Let's see, what's another one? Okay, so another interesting one. So this is a very popular defense. We're going to see knight bd7 many, many times. And from here, white has a lot of playable moves that are possible here. You can play f3, you can play e3, you can play knight f3, you can play queen d3. So there's a lot going on. Gosh, I think David Preuss, I think he even plays queen d2. So lots of different things can happen here. I am going to suggest that there is a best move for white here. I think that as a lifelong Veresov player, I have always believed that knight f3 is in some way better than the other moves. And the reason for this is very complex. And I'm going to have to do a deep dive on this in the section after this. But I just want to look at a trap real quick. And it helps to explain this trap, to explain my reasoning. So if we play knight f3, what this move does is it actively fights against c5. And that's why I like it so much. I think when you play any d-pawn sideline, the very first point of order should be thinking about how good c5 is for black in the resulting positions. You should always try to make c5 bad, if you can. Because it becomes a very strong source of counterplay. You know, one of the first things black should always ask when you play as d-pawn sideline is, okay, you didn't play Queen's Gambit. Is it good if I just play Queen's Gambit? And usually it is. So, very important to me. The reason that you can't play c5 here is that this is actually a free pawn. You can just take this with white with impunity. And the details just don't work out well for black. It's pretty phenomenal. For instance, you can get e6, b4. They can try to undermine, but it doesn't work. And you get this position where actually there's just no counterplay whatsoever. And the more they struggle, the worse it gets for them. You can look into this a little bit, but it is actually over already here. That is the freest pawn in chess. So I think that's quite useful. I think stopping this move is very useful. You might see people try to obviate this with this first, for instance. And we're going to be in time in the center here. So this isn't particularly dangerous. But it's worth noting, if you play Queen d3, then this idea does not work anymore. For instance, if they do this, you know, now they can undermine because the queen is no longer protecting the rook in the corner. You can no longer maintain this pawn, so it's not good to capture out anymore here. So I think this is a really important reason why knight f3 might be the better move when you think about those two moves. Queen d3 is still playable. You know, I just think that it gives black a little bit more counterplay options, like a few more viable options. So, you know, you have to just be good at chess. You know, doesn't necessarily mean anything. You know, I think play whatever you want to play. I'm just explaining one of the reasons why I play this. But that's an interesting trap to know about. Another interesting one is you can see c5 sometimes. And this is going to be part of the theoretical deep dive, because I spent a lot of time working on white's answer to 3c5. There's a type of player that really likes this move. I think it is black's most skeptical move. Black is trying to say, hey, buddy, I don't think that your opening works at all when they play this. So I think it's important for white to play very actively here. White does get very good play here, multiple different ways, and there are many ways you can play in this position. I will just say that I think probably from an engine standpoint, if chess is ever solved, I suspect that e3 is the best move here. I know there's some engine noise here, but trust me on this. I think if you really, really look at this very, very deeply, there are reasons that I think e3 may turn out to be the best move. And a lot of them come down to, if you play e3, this ends up being literally a Shigorin with an extra tempo. That's what this position is in that case. So, you know, the Shigorin defense, you have this, right? So this position here, for instance, is like basically an extra tempi, but it's the same position. And this position has been played by many strong players. And you'll find so many grandmasters that have played this and gotten results with it that what I'm thinking is, like, if you add an extra tempi to it with the white pieces, surely it can't be bad. That's my thinking anyway, but, you know, you're free to disagree. There are also other options here, but I just want to bring this up right away because we're actually going to look at a position that I think is slightly inferior to this for white, but it's tricky and very trappy. So an interesting thing white can do is white can take. And so first trap we need to cover is if they take with the wrong pawn. There's a right and a wrong way to take. This is the correct way and this is the incorrect way. Let's just quickly show why this is wrong. This is wrong because we're going to play this, and this, and we're going to win that one. Okay? End of discussion. Black has a very painful time trying to maintain the central pawn, and white is going to get pretty much all of the aggressive play that there is to be had in this position. You know, you can defend if you're an engine, but from a human standpoint, it's painful. So let's go back and talk about if they take with the G-pawn. So for many years, I played E4 here. And the reason I played E4 is that there is a trap that you can get. After D takes E, D takes C, it's a bad idea for black to trade queens. If black trades queens into this position, there are some issues. Big problem that can occur is if black tries to protect this central pawn. For instance, they lose the rook in the corner, and that's that. And, you know, at worst, maybe they can get the knight and make it an exchange instead of a whole rook. But they're actually going to have to fight very hard to get this knight. So you end up getting very reasonable compensation for being down the bishop pair and, you know, having a central pawn minority in this position. There is still some chess to be played, but, you know, you don't want this to happen with the black pieces. So that's another trap, for instance. And I want to just cover one other thing. There's another option for white here. You can also play knight f3. This is kind of an interesting one. So the idea behind knight f3 is that we're actually going to delay e4 a little bit more. We are going to play this move, but we're just waiting for a little more commitment from black first. We can have knight c6 here, and then e4. And there's this incredible sequence here where they take the e-pawn and actually push. And if they take, he takes f3, he takes c6, queens, and if they take this pawn, it just loses. It's phenomenal. This is a really fun one. This is a really fun one. So white has knight b5 in this position. It's just absolutely crushing. And there's just no good way to deal with this. So this is going to happen. It can't be stopped. And from there, it's a matter of technique, basically. Your knight will be stuck in the corner, so you're going to have to play some good chess to free the pony. But white does have a pathway to freedom from there, so this is a winning position. So that's just some interesting traps that can occur. And there are others. Maybe we'll cover one more here. Okay. One more interesting one that I want to bring up is, what if they bonk? What if they bonk here? So I have a lot to say about this defense, and this is going to be part of another chapter that I put together. But I've found that if you back up many players fall apart very quickly. They expect you to take. They just assume that you're going to take. They assume that this is forced. And it is by no means forced to take this knight. Any more so than you're forced to take the knight over here in the Ruy Lopez. You could just back up. That is fine. Our goal is to get this bishop out of the chain. It doesn't necessarily have to take this knight. The bishop's out of the chain. We can close the chain. We're getting our pieces out. We're playing chess. So if they play c5 here, just worth noting, this whole thing, there is still some sauce here. For instance, you can take, and all of this, for instance, this whole thing here. Take. I assume that's just terrible. Yeah, this just ends up being the same thing. Same thing. So, worth noting. Worth noting that you can do that. So, I need to talk about some theory here. So, when we go into knight bd7, I do think the best move is probably h6. And there's a real question here of which way is the best way to back up. And I believe it is theoretically better to back up to f4. And the reason that I backed up to f4 for a long time is that you can get this kind of thing where you do that, and then this, and this, and because your bishop is still on this diagonal, he can come back to put pressure on this queen. So I like keeping the bishop on this diagonal for this kind of situation here. I want to discourage the queen from camping out on the queen's side, because I would like to castle long and play e4, and then, you know, g4, h4, g5, and just, you know, rawr, right? That's what we want. That isn't happening if this queen is over here, because then black has an attack that is faster than ours. So this queen needs to go away, right? And, you know, the issue is if you back up to h4, right, then you can no longer swat the queen away. So this position is not, you know, that I think this is a little bit more critical now from the black pieces. Black has achieved something here, I think. Now you can still play this, and I think the way to go about this is to block the pin like this. But, you know, now you're moving a piece second time. You're kind of giving up some control of the e5 square. It's annoying. So, you know, it's a slightly worse position now. But it may be necessary. It might be necessary to do that for white. That is the true and dark story that I have to tell you, is that there is a problem with bishop f4. And the problem is, if we go all the way back to here, and we go at it from this move order, okay, so if you back up to here, this is bad, right? This is bad, because now we're giving black a Jabava with an extra move. That can't be good. Black just gets a better version of the Jabava. So in order for the Veresov to have any theoretical relevance at all, we have to have something better than this in this position. You know, we can't go into a worse Jabava in this line. And you're probably wondering, well, what about taking? Well, the problem with taking, there is a problem. There is a problem with taking. You know, for many years, you know, I would play this, and I felt very comfortable and confident with that setup. But there actually may be a bit of a soundness issue in this position. So, like, if you try to do this, you know, this actually just doesn't work out for white. It just doesn't work out. Black is able to keep everything very, very solid here, and you really don't have a meaningful attack. They're probably even going to castle you. And black is going to be positionally better in these ensuing positions here. This attack doesn't actually work out for them. You know, I've gotten many wins with that sort of hack attack, but I just think that there is an issue with that. So, you know, you can play this position, but you just need to be mindful that you have to play it more positionally, and you have to go for like this, and, you know, admit you made a mistake with your knight and then play c4, and it's like, okay, you know, you can play that way, and it is equal, and it does draw, and many people have gotten really good at grinding those kinds of positions, but you're just not going to get the swashbuckling attack that you really wanted to get if you go down this pathway. So that is the harsh truth about taking this knight. In 2026, you know, the neural network engines just aren't a huge fan of taking the knight here. So that leaves backing up this way. Well, what's the problem with backing up this way? The problem with backing up this way is that, remember this whole thing here? Remember this whole thing here? Here, let me remind you. Let me remind you, in case you weren't sure. Boom! We've transposed. We've transposed. So, so now you see the dilemma that the h6 move order can be used to get a better version of this position, basically. You get into this position here. This is a very important move order resource for the black pieces, and I think there is actually an argument to be made that h6 might be the best move for black. Bleak if it's true, but you need to know the truth about this opening, and, you know, the truth is it's a sideline for a reason. There's no advantage for white, and you do have to play carefully in the most critical line here. You got to know about this. I believe that you can grind this and get good at it and play for wins here, and this is fine for white, but you know, some of the fun things that you might have thought you could do, you can't actually do, and the opening is more positional than you might think. You know, many people treat it like a very aggressive sort of, I'm going to throw all my pieces and checkmate you opening. But the actual truth is, if you play this properly and you play it soundly, it is a more positional opening. If black wants it to be, if black wants it to be, and there's no way around that. You really do have to play it the right way. So that's the way it is. But it's still a totally valid opening, and you can play for wins here and get good at it. So whatever. I just think it's worth knowing. And so, like, because of this move order thing, what I do is, if we approach this from the other move order here, I throw in the bonk first, right? I just back up this way in all cases now, because it's less memorization, right? It's just better if you have to do this anyway against 3h6, then you might as well just learn to get good at this and do it all the time. So even though from this move order, I do think this is a better move, it's just, you know, you reduce the tree of memorization, basically, if you go the other way. So that's my input on this. That's my 2 cents here, and Yeah, so you can take that to the bank. Veresov, still sound in 2026, but you do have to play it correctly. And most people don't. So there you go.